This long thread was posted by a Twitter account called Push Biden Left, which is impossible, of course. And I verified just about everything on this list to make sure this is all accurate. They go into a list of what Harris has done in the past, and here are some of them. Before she became vice president, she launched her career as the tough-on-crime top cop, rising from district attorney of San Francisco to attorney general in California. In solid blue California, Kamala campaigned on the right-wing position of repeatedly laughing at the idea of legalizing marijuana, despite the fact that even her Republican opponents supported it. Kamala could have joined the state's efforts to take marijuana off the DEA's list of most dangerous substances, or she could have refused to defend the law as the top cop. Instead, she chose to send thousands of disproportionately black Californians to jail for marijuana. While she was DA, San Francisco was responsible for 40% of all California's felony drug arrests of black women, with 50% the rate of other counties. With 50 times the rate of other counties. They had 50 times the account of felony drug possession. And, you know, I've gone through how insane our drug laws are many times, so I'm not going to spend time on it here. But it's sociopathic. It's insane. It's unhinged to lock people up for drugs when a slightly different drug that does exactly the same thing is all legal as long as it's in a pill bottle. It's just garbage in so many ways. I mean, that's just one of the ways, but so many ways. 1 in 10 of her black constituents were arrested in 1 year alone. 1 in 10 of her black constituents were arrested in 1 year. She locked up so many, the Supreme Court ruled her prisons were unconstitutionally overcrowded. She not only refused to release folks, and I've covered this before, that California was told to release prisoners because they were overcrowded. She argued that she had to keep them in there because she needed the prison labor. California needed the prison labor, which means slave labor, free or almost free labor. You know, like for their firefighters, which are like half prisoners. When supporting legal weed became politically expedient, Kamala shifted to laughing about how she herself had smoked while locking up others for the same thing. So she was locking up people for smoking marijuana. She was asked in an interview, did you ever smoke marijuana, like in college? And she laughed and said, of course, and said something like, my parents are Jamaican. Of course I'm Jamaican heritage, of course. And so she laughed, ha, 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 I smoke marijuana, but then stuck with the totally sociopathic, lacking any empathy idea that she's going to lock up all those who smoke marijuana. Even her father, her own father, and this is true, I looked up the newspaper articles, he said he wished to categorically disassociate ourselves, meaning him and his family, from this travesty. And what he was saying, because he's Jamaican, what he was saying is that it was disgusting to to give credence to the stereotype that all Jamaicans are just pot-smoking, lazy people. And so he said he didn't want to have anything to do with it. As part of her tough-on-crime approach, Kamala assigned senior prosecutors to misdemeanors like graffiti and vandalism, tripling the number of cases brought to trial for graffiti. Do you know how pathetic that is? To lock someone up for a paint. Meanwhile, you've got people in the biggest office, the ivory towers, just exploiting everyone. Wage theft, just as one example, that is done at places like McDonald's. Millions of dollars stolen from people. But no, we're going to lock up that dude with the spray can, with the paint. We're going to lock up that guy because he threw a rock at a building. This guy knocked down a sign because he wanted to put a stop sign in his bedroom. He thought it'd be funny and he could show his friends. And now we're locking him up in prison. And she was proud of this. She prosecuted 3 strikes cases, which are 3 strikes, which Biden led, the whole idea of 3 strikes and you're out, locked up forever, meaning that especially the 3rd strike can be something like stealing a candy bar. And there are people in prison right now for life for stealing a candy bar because that was their 3rd strike. It's repulsive. There's a guy in Louisiana that I saw an article about, locked up for life for stealing a jacket because he was cold. Other countries, this is unheard of. In most countries, you steal a jacket, yeah, there'll be some kind of punishment, probably, maybe a fine. If they really want to be strict, maybe you got to go to stealing management classes. I don't know, kleptocracy classes. No, that's what Biden needs to go to. The idea of locking someone up for life for stealing a jacket or a candy bar or something, or even having drugs, is just utterly repulsive. And this is, yet again, to get to core reality, this is in many ways part of the inverted moral universe in which we live. We are so deluded and screwed up and twisted, or so many of us are, that we think it somehow makes sense. That you'll have people argue with you about how it's okay to lock someone in a cage for their life because they were cold and they grabbed a jacket. To even begin to defend that is so gut-wrenchingly morally repulsive. And that's where we are. But that's where our system has told us to be. So at the core reality, it's not when you have this debate with someone, like I have people in my family who I could have this debate with. Brad did a crime related to time. It rhymes, so it must be true. Crime and time rhyme. Yep, so does rhyme, which makes it true double time. At the heart of it, you can't get mad at them. You have to get mad at the system that told them that this was the truth, that told them this was okay. And we should remember that this is systemic problems. Don't hate someone. I'm not saying it's not okay to argue with them, but don't hate someone for believing the thing the system told them to believe. They haven't dug deep enough. They haven't read deep enough. They haven't watched the right shit. Kamala also pushed for, I've mentioned this many times, locking up parents because their kids were truant, meaning missing school. So imagine you're a single mother, a single parent, and you're barely able to have the two jobs and put a roof over the kids' heads, and maybe have 2 kids, 3 kids, and get the food on the plates, and you're trying desperately. And guess what? With less parenting, which often comes with lots of jobs because the parent's not there as much, you often have kids that are a little more delinquent. Delinquent doesn't mean they're awful humans. It just means they're lacking in some parenting, probably. Those kids then sometimes show up to school less. And then the parent, Kamala, wanted to and did on several occasions lock up parents because their kid didn't show up to school. And does that help anything? Like, now the kid has 0 parents. Now the kid is in foster care or something. You are destroying lives so that you can go, I'm tough on crime. It's so despicable. So despicable. Kamala even pushed a law forcing schools to turn undocumented students over to ICE. God, she is, honestly, it's like Caligula as you dig into her record. Separating from their parents and violating human rights. Kamala opposed reforming California's 3 strikes law, which I just went into how horrific that is. Even her GOP opponent was to the left of her on this. Like, she's basically a right-wing Republican. When the 3 strikes law sent a wrongfully convicted man to prison, Kamala tried to keep him there on a technicality. And this is something that many prosecutors have tried to do when they're truly the worst of the worst, is it comes out that someone is innocent. Like, at first they're able to lock them up because they tell everyone they're guilty and there's not enough evidence to prove they're innocent. But then eventually it comes out they are innocent. And the prosecutor still tries to keep them in prison to, like, defend their reputation or something. I mean, to me, that moment screams the most of being a sociopath. Being a prosecutor to begin with, there are some prosecutors that they're just like, well, this is the law and I'm doing the law and etc. Some iffy stuff going on there, but it's not necessarily sociopath. The sociopath, I think you get into when it's like, no, we found out this guy is innocent, and we're now going to do everything we can to either get the proof he's innocent thrown out or to find some technicality that'll keep him in prison. To me, that's just like, oh, full on sociopath. You do not understand other humans are human. So they tried to keep this guy in prison. When civil rights groups and 100,000 petition signatures got him released after 14 years, she took him back to court again for a crime he didn't commit. God, I'm going to go ahead and play this video. This is so horrific. Her with her just making fun of protesters who don't want innocent people locked up.
I have friends like Eva Patterson. Okay, so I say with all love and warmth that part of the concern also for people who are progressive thinking and liberal minded, or just progressive thinking in terms of just fix it, is that we all have these posters in our closet that is attached to a stick that we sometimes will card out when we're talking about criminal justice policy and those statistics that you first heard when we opened it up, incarceration. And we run around with these signs, build more schools, less jails. Build more schools, less jails. And we walk around everywhere, build more schools. We protest, build more schools, less jails. Put money into education, not prisons. There's a fundamental problem with that approach, in my opinion. And it's this. I agree with that conceptually.
Mhm.
But you have not addressed the reason I have 3 padlocks on my front door. So part of the discussion about reform of criminal justice policy has to be an acknowledgement that crime does occur, and especially when it is violent crime and serious crime, well, there should be a broad consensus that there should be serious and severe and swift consequence.
It's interesting because you get down to kind of the core of what she's talking about and what that motto is. The truly repulsive thing about this is just her making fun of protesters who want to educate people and not have people locked behind bars. It's so cringeworthy. Just everything she says is so cringeworthy. But you get down to the core of what that poster means. Build more schools, less jails. Okay. Now, at the core, it means that when people are more educated, when people understand their world a little better and they're able to get jobs a little better and things like that. Now, there's a million problems with this, such as the fact that our education system in many large ways is designed to take millions of kids every year and teach them basically to be drones sitting in wooden desks all day going, yes, master. Like, there's a lot of that goes into our schools, a lot of bullshit history, a lot of teaching that type of stuff. But push all that aside for a second. Hypothetically, you have more education, people get better jobs, they're able to make better decisions, and then they end up in prison less. Part of that is true. But of course, if you have a fascist police force that is told to go and look for poor people and find reasons to arrest them, then building more schools is not going to stop that fascist police force. It's got to be both those things. But instead, what she says is, hey, when you say build more schools, less jails, you're thinking systemic. You're thinking, how do we create a system that locks up fewer people? And Kamala Harris then goes, but here's the problem. I also want to lock up lots of people. That's basically what she just said is, no, I still want loads of people in prison. Of course, she doesn't want to answer. Why is it that the U.S. system is uniquely like this? Why is it that the U.S. is the #1 prison state in the world? The most prisoners and the most prisoners per capita. It is mainly because of things like 3 strikes and you're out. It's not because America is the only one that has ramifications for bad things happening. Just about every country in the world, I'd say every country in the world has some kind of ramification for bad things happening. Then you get deeper into that. Well, okay, bad things done by the lower classes. Not the bad things done by the rich people, not the bad things done by the, rich people. Hell, that Israeli kid ran over a cop in Florida and they're letting him loose because he's going to go join the IDF. If you're the kid of a rich person, if you're a rich person, you can run over whoever you want. Countries have ramifications. They just don't have, I'm going to lock you up forever for stealing a jacket. And Kamala doesn't want to address that because she is a lunatic who just wants to lock up loads of people. She's a prosecutor. She is the top cop. She also defended the discriminatory practice of cash bail, which only 2 countries in the world have cash bail, us and the Philippines, because it is a policy, a system that is incredibly harsh on, guess what? Poor people. If you have enough money, you can pay your bail. Almost always. Even very rich people, even when they're like, wow, you're very rich, we're going to make the bail really high. You're very rich, you have $1 billion, we're going to make the bail $1 million. Still, a very rich person can go, not a problem, and pay that. She also opposed the bill to reform civil asset forfeiture, which is when cops steal people's property. Cops actually nowadays steal more property than street theft. So when property is stolen, like on the street, meaning car theft, that kind of taking someone's wallet out of their pocket, cops actually steal more than all of that combined. Kamala even lied about her state's solitary confinement to block a suit by inmates claiming there was none in California, no solitary confinement, when there were about 6,400 victims of solitary confinement. So she straight up lied in order to keep people in a torturous cell locked up. Kamala also ignored pleas from the Black Caucus and civil rights orgs, choosing to oppose bills to require independent investigations of police shootings and statewide use of body cams. I brought to you the other day how body cams are actually they're largely a trick. They're not actually useful, but most people don't know that. 2012, cops shot an unarmed Latino man in the back and handcuffed him, and he died. So they shot him and then handcuffed him. That's really great. And then they used less than lethal guns and dogs to attack concerned women and children who were watching it before fatally shooting another unarmed Latino man in the back the next day. Kamala refused to investigate. So that was her DA that was basically tasked with, are you going to look into these cops that did this? They handcuff one guy, shoot him in the back. They release dogs on those who are upset. They then shoot another guy in the back the next day. And Kamala said, nah, it doesn't need investigation, looking fine. When her cops shot a mentally ill woman, Kamala responded by prosecuting the victim. She prosecuted a mentally ill woman shot by San Francisco police. That's unbelievable. It's disgusting. That's the thing. It's not like the stuff she's doing is just like, oh, that's a poor choice. It's like repulsive. Repulsive. This speaks to who she is. It speaks to what she stands for. It speaks to what she will do as president. This doesn't mean I like Donald Trump. Donald Trump can go flyingly fuck himself. I mean, he can't because he's not flexible enough. But if he could, he should.